introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your Eve history, since people may have not seen your interview from last year, and who you fly with, if anyone.
So let's see. I started playing Eve at the beginning of COVID when I had far too much home time of it to myself. I'd got bored with EverQuest, so migrated to Eve at the suggestion of a friend, and uh, really took the industrialist path. So flying a venture around, trying to get a few bits and bobs together. This was at the time when Plex was 1,500 a unit, which was a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, exactly. I went. I got into a new players corp with the infamous Mr. 10%, but it was useful because he was very helpful in getting content done and teaching us how to mine safely. Although it brings me on to one of the bugbears I have of high sec. It's I'm not sure if I can really call it grief ganking, but it comes close when you have someone who stacks up a whole load of gank cats in a system, and then just goes and kills ventures, just new player ventures. And there you are, or new player coveters, And at the beginning, it takes a lot to get a coveter, and someone just coming in and jumping on you in a high sec, getting beaten up by the Concorde, and then just coming back again within a minute. You've got to say there's something wrong with the game mechanics that they can do that.
Mhm.
This is one of the experiences which kind of drove me on my CSM career path, that we need to have a look at high sec and what high sec is and what it means, and whether it needs to be whether some of the things need to be addressed, which I'll come on to later. So history wise, then I went into a wormhole corp. Spent a few years living in wormholes. Um, it's one of those expectations in wormholes. You get into a lot of fights, you get ganked a lot, you lose a lot of expensive ships, but you're making so much ISK it doesn't matter. So that was kind of the experience, and I'd had enough of it really when the last time our Astra house got blown up, and I left some expensive stuff in there over Christmas, and it ended up costing about six billion or something like that. Quite a lot of ISK in which went down the drain. But I settled back into high sec, and some people who are around low sec who encouraged me to carry on and teach me the ins and outs of low sec, which was cool. And it's good that it's good that low sec is quite active. You just have to be incredibly observant when you're in low sec. High sec, you can kind of wander off and make a coffee and come back and probably still be alive. But low sec, you've got to be hawkish when you're playing. And which brought me into PI, because the wormholes and low sec are really great places for doing PI. So I have an order for oodles and oodles of fuel blocks, which require a bit of low sec ninja mining and quite a lot of PI to do. I don't know if you know the path, but it's not the most complicated, but it's still a bit of a pain in the neck. And the way the game mechanics work, it's easy to get some parts, not so easy to get other parts, and then frankly a nightmare to get the last parts. So this is just part of what you experience doing PI. And I have my own gripes with PI, which again I'll come on to later. So now what I'm doing is knocking around high sec, low sec borders, doing a bit of PI, a bit of mining, a bit of ice mining, a lot of PVE at the moment. It's the Crimson Harvest. I got picked up an Orca Crimson Harvest skin. I'm
Oh,
quite.
nice.
Oh yeah, I'm happy with that. I actually did my own. It's pretty much the only skin I did, because I like the Aurora Universalist skins. They have that ice blue fading
Hmm.
into purple look, which is pretty cool. And so I designed one for an Orca, which looks quite blingy. But one of my aunts can fly an Orca, so I might hand it over to them. So what else? Oh, picture behind me. That's Colorado. Just saying.
So
It looks
you
cute.
you went out for CSM last year. Is your
Oh,
platform the same, or is it a little bit
pretty
different this year?
much the same. I think the two weaknesses in the game are, for most people. Two weaknesses are the level of player violence in high sec, which which leads me on to one of the things of the casual play issue, which again will remind me to get back to that. So the amount of wanton ganking that goes on in high sec is kind of unacceptable. And it really depends what CCP wants the game to be. Do you want it to be a sandbox where you have an area, one part of the sandbox is there for people to kick the living daylights out of each other, which seems to be what CCP employees like doing from time to time. Or do you, and do you want a part of it to be a sandbox where people can just do straightforward things and they're not likely to die unless they do something particularly stupid? You see, I've got the Eve mug here. But I have the Eve mug here, which has the appropriate podded person on it. Um, so so that's one of the things that I have in for discussion. The second thing is that there is wormhole space. I mean, one of the things I found about wormhole space is it got boring. It actually did get quite boring. You know, you undock, you go off, you close a hole, you mine the hell out of the Knies, take a more order in and do sites, and then dock up and scan your way slowly over however many hours it takes to find a high sec connection near to Jita. So you know it becomes a bit repetitive and boring after a while, and that I'm wondering how things could be made more interesting and and also a bit more risky, because this is one of the things that I had in debate last year was what can you do to make wormhole space have the risk match the reward that you get. And there are some things which could be done which would make it more incentivized. Let me just get rid of this call. I tell people I'm talking and they insist on calling me anyway. Do you ever have that? uh, you, with wormhole space, I think that there are some interesting ideas that came up, like uh, if the number if your wormhole isn't kept clean, so you've got an Astra house which was sitting there and hasn't been attacked. So for example, if you've got an Astra house which has been sitting there not really used, and the system has got a lot of green pops, should there be some point where the sleepers attack the Astra House? You know, if you've got up to 20 sleeper sites in the system, might they not just say, okay, there's an Astra House there, maybe we should attack it? And so then you'd have to come back in and respond and get your players back online to defend your Astra. That would be one way of making it kind of more risky. And maybe to pull some form of non-player agent into doing wormhole stuff. I mean, that might be interesting as well. So, an exploration agent that would give you tasks to find to do in wormholes. So this might be interesting to make life a little bit more interesting for the wormholers. Um, Planetary industry is another thing that I'm still standing on. That it's really awkward to use. It's painful to set up. It's awkward to use. So, what can be done just in terms of the UI to make life a bit easier? I mean, I'm thinking particularly of setting timers. You know, you fiddle around with the timers, and if like me, you've got a number of outs and you're producing a supply chain. You don't want to have to go back and restart the extraction all the time. It becomes a pain in the neck. So, how can you actually make PI more easy? And the other thing in the keeping of the game is PI is a static thing. You know, it's been around for a long time, and it is very much a static thing. So, in the spirit of the game, why not allow for uprisings? Your local people have decided they've had enough of you and throw you off the planet, and you have to hire mercenaries to go and sort them out. Maybe. I mean, you've got mercenaries in the game. You've got Vanguard. So maybe you can bring the two together to defend yourself against an uprising in PI, because otherwise it's a sort of a passive income. It's just passive income. So maybe that's something that needs to be looked at. And there are other irritating things in the interface about placement and movability of certain of the utilities around the screen as well. That my screen always gets very crowded, and there may be a way of improving the sharpness of the UX. And that's something that I've been involved with in real life over the years. Maybe that's something that I can contribute with the developers, saying, okay, this is something which is really irritating. What can you do about it?
Okay,
So
well, it sounds like you have quite a bit on your agenda for CSM20. Let's go ahead and get into some questions about why players don't undock or why they log in. The first one is, what do you think the biggest barrier is to the new players undocking?
getting shot at, probably. I think it's a question of understanding the game. The new player experience with Aria actually is quite good, and I quite like it when I set up another out. That storyline that teaches you how to use the interface is very good, and then learning through the new player missions is also very good. So I think making sure that new players actually get on and do those missions, maybe improving the reward. At least at the end of it, you get out of it a number of useful ships, and you should have an understanding of how to use them at a superficial level. But then also is content. The biggest thing with any game is that it gets boring and repetitive, and so giving players content that they're able to stand up to and take part in is an important part of the game. And this comes back to the work that you're doing in the Eve Rookies, in helping people get to understand the game and take part in the game. So I know I've been a little remiss in open fleets, but usually if I'm out mining with an orca or a porpoise, if someone comes in and just asks me nicely, they'll get a fleet invite, and I can help them with some advice on what they're doing and what's worth doing and what isn't. It's always I'm always there to help if anybody asks me the question. It just depends what I'm doing. So most of the time, if I'm undocked, I'm there and I'm active.
So, speaking of fleets, what role do you think fleets play in player retention?
A pretty big one, actually. For one thing, you get the social aspect of the fleet, and most most corporations will have a Discord channel where you're able to talk to other players, and sometimes that gets quite juicy. Also having interaction with other players, I think it's a very important part of the game. So social play is actually one of the big things in this game. So fleets are very, very important in keeping players engaged. So if you are able to, say, have a a, a, a Stamtish fleet at 5 o'clock in the afternoon for people who are coming home from work and do something before din-dins. This is the sort of thing that makes players' life more interesting. And I know it's a lot of hard work for people who organise. I started out playing as a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons years ago, and it takes a lot of effort to make content. But that's one
Indeed.
of the things that helps people stay in the game. And actually, I think the idea of player driven missions is also helpful as well, because this is something which enables players to interact more and do things more. You have to make sure that you adjust it to make it worth the while of players doing it. I saw someone wanting to get ice somewhere, And ice is always a pain in the neck to get. Even if you're skilled up, it's slow, it's tedious, and takes any amount of time. Now, I know some players who spend all day just ice mining. They have fleets in every ice system across the HISEC and go out in Orca plus a whole fleet of semi-botted ships, and off they trot with 7 screens around. That's if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. I prefer to have a little more content when I'm online. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea of having player-driven missions, I think, is also part. It's also as good as having fleets. It can be as good as having fleets. Next question.
Yeah, sorry.
I know you're working too. While you're organising your thoughts, I'm going to have another sip.
um, what kind of content do you think keeps players logging in? And this isn't just brand new players, but players in general.
Well, it's interesting. I had a question directed at me on the forums about this, and someone was talking about the daily missions. And I think the daily missions are a really good thing for player retention because it gives people a reason to log on. Otherwise, you might sit and say, okay, can't be asked to log on this week. I've got better things to do, and just play at the weekends. Daily missions or even weekly missions will keep people logging in and doing things. So yeah, you can do them pretty quickly. I mean, if you've worked out how to game the system, three jumps and 50 LP is not difficult to get. Um, they're having those daily quests or daily missions. So EverQuest coming out to me again. Then if you have those daily missions, then that gives people a reason to log on. When they log on, people them if they're in corporation, people they'll say hi. Oh, we're doing this. Do you want to come and join? And so on. So I think the daily missions as an anchor for getting people to log on is. And I've noticed. I mean, the statisticians amongst you will be able to confirm this, but I've noticed that the server population has gone up. A couple of years ago, the 5 o'clock CET population was about 17,000. Now it's typically 23, 24. So that's a big improvement in the consumption of the game.
Okay. Now you were talking a little bit earlier. I believe you mentioned solo players.
Yep.
Do you think that we should encourage solo players to get into fleet activities, or do you think we should just kind of leave them alone?
I think it's a question of engaging them. Solo players, you might just be a solo player because you don't particularly want to engage. There are people who like that. They might just want to be solo players. A lot of people go online to get social interaction that they might not get in their regular life, and Eve will provide a vehicle for that. I mean, one of the problems I always used to find when in the days when I was playing other games, you had um, the syndrome of hanging around the plane of time library because that's where everybody would be there looking for a group, and um, providing some content and having players champion some content. And this is something which has actually occurred to me, that typical sitting in the bath thinking. But it occurred to me that it might be something that CCP wants to do is to um, give people a fleet command status, or if they can apply for a fleet command station status, where they are there to look to recruit people to go do stuff. So if you want to go and if you want to go and do low sec missions or something, or high sec missions, and then there will be some pilots hanging around the main trade centres to recruit you to go off and do something. So this might be an idea that it might be worth CCP thinking up some form of reward system for people who are active in recruiting players to go do fleet work.
Now, do you think that there should be more solo activities in Eve? We already have abyssals. People can go do level 4 missions or mine, but really, when you think about how much time it takes to get prepared, there's nothing really that people can shove in like a 30-minute lunch break, 40-minute lunch break, or maybe that hour in between the kids going to bed and having to go to bed themselves.
I would argue that point. Um, I mean, it depends on your skill level, to be honest, and you have to get up to a level where you can do this stuff. Um, but if you're able to if you're able to fly a reasonable destroyer, you can knock around high sec for sure, doing ratting sites to your heart's content. I mean, one of the things I learned early on is salvage is worth waiting for, and so I would always just pile up go out, do rattings, pile up the salvage, and make stuff and sell stuff. And that's really how I started getting into industry. Was doing the salvage and making tier one stuff that people buy. So it I think there is content. There could be more content, but um, it's centered around the mission agents, and you play them to the level you're able to. So yeah, I mean, if you've got 25 minutes and you're sitting there with your sandwich laptop, you can easily go and knock out some tier one, tier two sites in ISEC, even if you're a fairly new player. You just need to be able to fly a destroyer, and you should be able to get to a Vexor or an Omen in fairly short order as a new player.
Okay, so this summer we had a very interesting op down in Providence. The Eve community came together to kind of do a MPSI eviction of Absolute Order.
Yep.
What do you think about this? Do you think that the Eve community was in the right, or were they in the wrong, or are you neutral about it? It was just content. What are your
Um,
thoughts about?
I think my friends I have friends in Absolute Order, and they would they have views about this.
Oh, I'm
but
sure they do.
but to be fair, Providence is low sec, yeah,
Yeah, nullsec.
nullsec.
Yeah.
So you're in nullsec, and therefore you're in the part of space where you're open to getting attacked. Um, I think they mounted a spirit fence, and they're rebuilding themselves. I mean, I know people who are in Brave Collective as well, and they benefited from all of this, and they also are quite happy with the situation. But one of the old players, someone been playing with for many years, make the point. If you're in that part of space, you have to be you as a corporation need to be large enough and prepared to mount a defense if someone decides to have a go at you. And I'm thinking of some of the epic battles that went on down in Delve over the years. I mean, you had measurable, in monetary terms, measurable amount of destruction from the ships from the ships that get destroyed. And what was it? The Great Battle of Delve, and there's something like 12 Titans destroyed in that. So my view is I feel sorry for Absolute Order, and I wish them well and hope they will rebuild. And of course, if they call on me for parts and materials, I'm always game for spending an hour dissolving asteroid belts for them. But it happens in the game. This is the game. You can't sort of you can't stand there and scream and say someone evicted me in nullsec. Yeah, you can't sit and scream and say someone evicted me in a wormhole. It happens. This is the game.
Okay, so we're gonna switch to some CSM questions. And
Okay.
the very first one is if you get onto the CSM and CCP were to ask you for a quality of life change that they could implement for you right away, what would that one quality of life uh, thing be?
Um, More beer and more available beer. That would be a good one. Oh, you mean in-game quality of
In
life?
game, yes.
Be specific. um, I think it's all to do with UX irritations. My quality of life questions are all about the things getting moved and things being unavailable. There are a lot of things in the UX that could be amended to make life easier. Um, I've kind of organized my life reasonably well where I'm situated, which I'm not going to publicize on an open video. But I make the point that that between station life and between player station life, the balance is fairly good. Is the My gripe is with the way the UX works and could be improved.
Okay. So, if you make it onto the CSM, what other candidates or candidate types would you like to work with?
Well, I looked at the list, and to be honest, none of them really, aside from your good self, of course, none of them really spring to mind because I don't know them well. They keep to themselves within most of them are megacore players, and so they tend to keep to themselves. So I haven't really had the opportunity to get to know what they're about. So I think I think it's a very long list this time, which doesn't help. But I think I'll just have to look at the. I have to cheat now and have a look at have a look at the list of people. But I think of the people who of the people. Okay, wrong post here. Let me just have a look again. Bear with me a moment. I should have prepared for this one. All right. So of all of the people, I think the Oz is a good choice because of his knowledge of economy and balancing the economy. I mean, you know him better than I do.
He is
Um,
indeed a wizard with the economy.
yeah. I think Mike Azariah is also someone who's he does care about the new players.
Absolutely.
I think the others, um, there are a lot of big corporation people who are being put forward, and I think that's one of the biggest dangers that the CSM has is that they end up being the voice of Parabellum, Brave, Goon Swarm, and a couple of other people, and so the new player, the small player, the casual player doesn't get so much of a voice on the CSM. And outside of the gaming topic, this is a forum to act as the voice of the customer, classic information technology development way of thinking. So, as a voice of the customer, one of the things that would concern me most as a developer is new player retention. Not You can always make new content for players. There's always a hunger for it, but it endlessly pandering to the well-established players is a killer of games. That you end up with nothing for the new player and a diminishing circle of more established players who go away, and so your game steadily dies. And so the people I would want to see on the CSM is a balance between those who will speak out for the casual player, the people who, like you say, who come on for half an hour or an hour once or twice a week, the new player who is getting bullied in high sec, and that balanced against the established players. So to be honest, have plenty to do in low sec and null sec without bothering people in high sec.
Okay. So, if you get onto the CSM, how would your approach to showing CCP that you have player support for different issues look like? So, for example, Mick Fightmaster has the Wormhole UN. Young Puke has been absolutely everywhere. Oz pulls his massive streamer community every year, so on and so forth. What would your method look like?
Well, since my community is kind of around the industrialist and the casual player community, I would use the player forums
Okay.
to get information and feedback. This is something which requires nothing from the new players to make any particular effort to get to. If it is appropriate so to do, then I might use I might use Twitch as a platform to be able to bounce ideas around and maybe have conversations with people who have a keen interest in how things are working. You can overreach in this world. I mean, I've been in business for a long time, and the why don't you go away when I say I'm busy? Go away. So the so the you can overreach with having too many channels to maintain. So I would focus on a few dedicated channels, maybe even going old school and using.
Okay, so you get onto the CSM. Congratulations, and in the first meeting, you find out that uh, you'll find out about the expansions coming up. You'll undoubtedly find out about the summer expansion and the fall expansion, sometimes even a few years out into the future. You
Mhm.
find out for this term, they are doing absolutely nothing that you have any experience with. Matter of fact, they are going to be working solely on Solve in nullsec. How do you think you're going to contribute to that CSM?
Well, it's finding things that I can do. I've never. I've as I've mentioned before, I've spent a long time in software development as a program and project manager. I've spent a lot of time in doing UX customer testing experience and gaining feedback. Part of what the CSM is acting as that voice of the customer. So there it is. The controllers of the CSM will be asking for feedback. I will go and gather feedback.
Okay. So, kind of in the same strain of thought, you find out that they're planning on taking industry out. They've decided that there's no longer a need, that it's just a lot of busy work, and they're totally removing it. How do you think that you can sit there and know this information without telling your community?
It's that's what a the non-disclosure agreement says. I mean, you just have to sit on it. That's unfortunately what the NDAs do. But look, I worked in Swiss banking, and in Swiss banking, you're practically not allowed to admit you're working in Swiss banking. So um, the level I'm used to heavy levels of confidentiality. I've even got security clearance or had security clearance at quite a high level, so I'm used to having to keep my mouth shut.
Okay. And then, of course, a lot of people think that the CSM, we are the people that are going to march into CCP's office and tell them what to do with their game.
I highly doubt that's true.
It's not. Spoiler. And that, when they make a decision that maybe they told the CSM, maybe they didn't, it's your fault and you need to go tell CCP to change it. How are you going to interact with these type of players that think that you're not doing your job as a CSM?
Um, Politically astutely.
Okay, that's a good answer. Uh, And then finally, we're down to one of the last questions.
Okie dokie.
Projection has been a very hot button issue for the CSM. I know that we spent an extraordinary amount of time on it in CSM18. I know CSM17 did as well, especially since Zarzak came out in their term. And I'm sure that 16, 15, 14 dealt with, long range projection. And 20
Uh,
did.
what what do you mean by projection?
So
You mean
projection is the ability to get from here to there.
uh-huh.
So there's tons of different forms of projection. Actually, jump clones are a form of projection. It's
Yeah.
just that it's a very slow form because you have a 24-hour cool period. Um, Filaments are actually a form of projection. Uh, the wormholes are a form of projection. But out in nullsec, one of the
Yeah.
most contested forms are the ansiplexes
Yeah.
because it
Um,
really
I,
allows them to move around and fairly quickly. Now,
I, I would say that out of my experience, I have done a hell of a lot of jumps. over the years, and I'm currently hanging around min matter space, and min matter space is a long way from everywhere. You go through Devoid to get to Amar, 30 jumps. You have to go through Edema to get up to Jita, 30 odd jumps. And my it's probably controversial to say this, but it's part of the game. So if I need to go to Jita, I do it on a basis I have to put up with doing a lot of jumps, and I don't go there in a slow ship. I you work your environment around where you are. So my jumping 10 or 15 jumps to Heck or to do Dixie ain't a problem. You get used to it. And if you want to go somewhere, if you as a player want to say, okay, I want to be able to play around Jita, fine, use the jump clone, go play there for a day, and jump back to wherever you were previously cloned. I mean, it might be worth reducing the jump timer on clones, but if you jump to a player station, you don't have a clone timer.
No, and this is true. However, the problem that keeps coming
And
up
you
for
can't,
the
and you,
CSM,
and you can't, and you cannot jump into a wormhole.
no, but think bigger. Out in nullsec, small and medium groups
Hmm.
cannot go out and get Sov because the big groups hold so much territory due to their antiplexes. So, for example, Horde actually holds 3 regions because their response team can get across those 3 regions very quickly. Or back before Zarzak was nerfed a little bit, where people could come through without any type of cooldown, Frat was actually able to get to the other side of Nullsec in about an hour.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I think you have to have a look at it from again slightly from outside of the game and look at it in terms of game balance. Are you doing something which is okay, convenient for certain players? And it comes also back to the established player question. Are you doing something which suits established players at the expense of people who are trying to build up? Um, and therefore, do you need to redress the game balance? So this is a debate that has to be had. How easy do you make it for one large group of people to use a particular feature of the game, specifically against smaller players? Okay, it's a sandbox, so big versus small is always going to be a thing, but you have to ask yourselves, if it wasn't there, how would you respond? So you can also uh, game the idea of, okay, so Frat is sitting there with able to jump an enormous fleet in half an hour, halfway across the galaxy. So if they couldn't do that, how would they do it? Well,
But,
use very very fast ships and have a fleet
but,
sitting where they want to be.
once they get their entire fleet over, they can go back just as quickly.
Like
And
I
that
said,
is where the problem is.
yeah. So this is where this is probably a debate that we would need to have outside of a short interview, but I would suggest that you have to have a look at the game balance and how it affects the ability of smaller people to challenge groups in nullsec. And I have to say, nullsec is not something I'm very familiar with. I haven't spent much time.
Okay.
Lowsec, yes. Lowsec, yes. Wormholes, yes.
Well,
Highsec, no.
honestly, this is a conversation that affects everyone, including LowSec, because you have groups like Frat who exist
Yeah.
in LowSec that are able to bring their dreads into LowSec very quickly and start
Yes.
beating on people. Because they can get to the border
Hmm.
in just a very short amount of time, and then they can go back once they're done, so they really aren't putting themselves at risk and hanging around and waiting for their timers to go down or whatnot.
So the
So,
question, so the question then is: does this feature unbalance the game, and should it either be removed or nerfed? And why was it introduced in the first place?
and again, so this is what all the CSM have been working towards. And the question is, if you were to get on the CSM, would you continue working on this problem, or do you think CCP should just
I
move on?
intellectually I can proffer my opinion. And if you have something which could be considered to be an exploit in a game, you have three things that you can do. I mean, I'm thinking of the famous games master approach in Dungeons and Dragons, when it's all drawn on a tabletop, on your mum's tabletop, much to her chagrin when she tries to clean it. And you say, you either, if it's something which is exploitable, you either nerf it so it's no longer as effective. You either get rid of it, or you modify it so it's risky. So if you're using, was it Absalom talking about? Absalom.
Sorry, Ansiblexes.
Ansiblexes. So I might suggest that you have a chance that the Ansiblex might blow you up, you and your ship up, when it's used. That would be one way of reducing the number of times people use it.
Absolutely. Okay.
Um, so, as I say, you have three choices: nerf, remove, or revise.
All right.
And this is the sort of conversation that some horrible little office block in Iceland. Um, then not that I'm saying CCP's offices are horrible. They are. Oh, I've seen the pictures. I've seen the pictures. They look like every conference room I've had from my time in banking through to working in the pharma industry. It always looks glamorous on the outside, but when you actually get into the room, it's an unpleasant meeting room. So yeah, I mean, this is exactly the sort of conversation I would have. I would expect to have, is to proffer an idea of balance, and that's where the politics comes in. I have experience in dealing with these sort of nutty issues in real life of what you do to rebalance a situation.
All right, excellent. So we are at the end. You have survived the
No.
entire interview. So go ahead and tell us why players should vote for you.
Because I'm independent. I'm not aligned to any one block with one particular axe to grind. My principal my principal grief is making sure that high-sec is high-sec and what we can do about that. And one of the thoughts is that, fine, you make high-sec safer, but if you're going to make it safer, you make it smaller. And if you make it smaller, then the trade routes between the major empires become low-sec and dangerous, and therefore that would have the effect, probably, of reviving the Wrens, the Hex, the Dixies of this world as trade hubs, which would in a way be a good thing for the game. So this is one idea that we could think about and talk about. So focusing on what we can do for new players. So encouraging and having not games masters, not GMs, but people who are some sort of elevated player who they can go to and ask. So your job will, as an in that role, would be to be around the major centres to recruit people who say, I just want to go and do something. What can I do? And have a chat about what their skills are, what their ships are. Do they need a ship? And go off and do something interesting. So providing player content. So this is another thing that we could do. And finally, to make sure the game remains playable for people who really don't have time to play a game. The people who come in who have one or 2 hours a week to play, and I do know players who are in that situation.
Absolutely.
1 or 2 hours a week to play, and providing content and balance so that they can take part in it as well.
Awesome. So if someone listens to this interview and would like to get in contact with you, how can they find you?
You have my in-game email. You have forums, so you can send messages to me in forum or in-game.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking again for another year, and best of luck with your campaign.
If not immediately in Iceland, I may well see you at the next fan fest.
Absolutely.
I believe it's my round.
Cool. I'll talk to you soon.